So, yeah, we've seen this before. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. What are these doing here? Where are the NFL helmets? All right, well, I think many of us expected a classic, a great game, an all-timer between the greatest of all time and between the greatest of all time and the possibly soon-to-be greatest of all time. But we didn't get it, and we didn't get it for a number of reasons. One reason came to mind during the pregame, and that's I didn't watch the pregame. I have checked out of the pregame of Super Bowls for a long, long time, but I did catch a couple minutes with the sound completely muted. But all I saw was Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes, and it hit me, as it does many times. There's actually 22 guys on the field. There are 22 guys out there playing football, not two. And we saw that tonight. Tom Brady was named the MVP. He should not have been named the MVP. He played well. He was not the reason Tampa Bay won the game. So Buccaneers win 31-9. Brad Johnson now has company as the greatest Tampa Bay quarterback of all time. Unfortunately, this is a sad night in the Brad Johnson household as he now has to share first place. But he did not win the Super Bowl MVP. There's a trivia question for you. Who won the Super Bowl MVP the first time John Gruden's Tampa Bay Buccaneers won the Super Bowl? Probably one of the lesser-known Super Bowl MVPs of all time. All right, great to see everybody in the live chat. We'll talk Super Bowl 55. We'll talk college football, of course. We'll talk NFL on this night. This is a college football channel. Yes, we are the voice of college football here. But it is the Super Bowl, and I've got some Super Bowl college football related statistics here to share. There was about 5 minutes left on the clock. The game was over, and I thought I'd look a few things up, and we will get to that. Yes, Michael Hogue, smash the like button. I got to say that if you like the content here, which I assume that people repeatedly watch videos and participate in live streams, that they like the content, therefore they would like the content to continue, therefore they should at least, at the very least, hit the like button. All right. Also, before we get into the football talk, I'll let you know that I released a live stream schedule earlier today, so check that out. It's on the community page of the YouTube channel. Check out our live stream off-season schedule. And we got a phone call coming in here. But once again, let me make sure everybody knows what I'm talking about here. Go to the community page on the YouTube channel, and you can check out our off-season live stream schedule, which will start tomorrow with our college football coast to coast with Pigskin Pete at noon Eastern time. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
I don't care what you say, Mark Rogers. He still couldn't beat the 1998 Ohio State Buccaneers.
No, absolutely not. No. Absolutely not.
Well, he did not. Who knew that year, by the way, Mark, that we would face the greatest college football coach of all time and then the greatest quarterback of all time?
That's funny that you bring that up and put that into perspective. So this is David Greenshield on the line, and he's telling all of you who are not picking up to his 1998 references that Ohio State team was consensus number one from opening week, tripped up against the Michigan State team, head coached by Nick Saban. And then later in the year, beat Michigan 31-16 in the shoe and quarterbacked by Tom Brady. Okay.
That's right.
Just wanted to set everybody straight on that so they know what we're talking about.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry. I would have gotten all that, but thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. I just have to say, you know, it's also interesting. Another tie to that game. Antoine Winfield shows you how old I am. I remember his dad played on that '98 team. His son plays for this Tampa Bay team.
Sure.
And had an interception today. So. There you go. I mean, wouldn't you know that? Although I've always wondered if Ohio State won the national title that year, and I debated this with Gerdman once online, I think that would have forced us to keep John Cooper for a few more years, don't you think?
Yeah.
So,
I do.
Might not have worked out for the better long term. You know?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't know. John Cooper was capable.
That's true. And we only had to wait another 4 years with Jim Tressel. But on to the game today. Did you watch pretty much all of it, Mark?
Oh, yeah. I watched all of it.
Okay.
I dozed off a couple times, but that was early in the game. I actually, anyway, yes, I watched the game.
Do you think that this is just further proof, like in the day and age of offense, and we were talking about this a lot in college football this year, but, defense still wins championships, Mark. I mean, that Tampa front seven and their secondary, I thought, did an excellent job today. I thought they were great at all three levels.
Defense wins championships and play at the line of scrimmage just to extend it to the offensive line. Because to compare what Tom Brady faced in terms of the pass rush versus Patrick Mahomes and the support that Tom Brady received from a running game versus what Patrick Mahomes did not or could not once they got down by double digits and they relied on the pass exclusively, that was huge, of course, too. I don't think Tom Brady outplayed Patrick Mahomes. I don't think that had anything to do with the game. And it wasn't as though Brady didn't play well, and it wasn't as though Mahomes played brilliantly or anything. It was just, I thought they both did what they typically do. It's just Mahomes was running for his life and didn't have a ground game and was playing from behind. And his defense was giving up score after score after score after score, making mistake after mistake after mistake after penalty after mistake. And Brady had a double-edged hammer from the backfield position with Fournette and Jones to rely on, and he threw the ball well and threw it capably, but he didn't have 200 yards passing, at least late in the game.
Yeah, I mean, some of that was a little bit of empty calories, I think, Mark. I don't know. I mean, the game was still, from the standpoint, it seemed like Tampa was pretty much in control of the game at that point. I think the one tactical mistake I think Andy Reid may have made in this game was maybe not running the football a little bit more early in the game, just for the simple fact that if you're trying to slow down a pass rush a little bit, it's probably a good idea to incorporate some running game just to keep that defensive line off balance a little bit. And I think that was kind of, and I understand that he wants to be pass happy from the standpoint that he's got Mahomes and he's got these receivers, but I think he would have done well to maybe run the football a little bit earlier in the game to maybe try and slow up that pass rush a little bit. What do you think of that?
Well, I can agree with that. Once it was established that the pass rush was going to be an issue, and I would think that they would have anticipated that, knowing that Eric Fisher was out of the game and that Tampa Bay has been one of the best pass rushing teams over the second half of the season. Right.
I think that those tackles being out were a killer for Kansas City because they could not block those edge rushers. And that front seven's got a lot of talent when you look at it, by the way, Mark. I mean, as I was watching them in their playoff run, you see like a Sue, and I remember Devon White when he was at LSU was a really good player, and a lot of really good talent in that front seven. So it was very impressive. By the way, did you think that Reid made a mistake at the end of that first half by not? I mean, Tampa was willing to run out the clock and be happy to be only up 14-6 at the end of the half. I mean, if you're Kansas City and you're only down 14-6 at the end of the half, I think you're going to take that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, to tell you the truth, I'd have to review that. I didn't even see that touchdown scored. I totally missed that going into the halftime. I really did. Once I got back to the game in the third quarter, I saw, I am just the worst for halftime shows for one thing. So I did everything I could. I know what you're talking about, but I did everything I could to avoid the halftime show. And I was already doing other things, and I missed the end of the first half. I would have never, if you would have told me at one point in my life that I would have missed a play in the Super Bowl, I would have told you, I would have slapped you across the face. But yeah, I didn't even know what happened at the end of the first half, and then I missed. And then there was about 14 minutes left in the third quarter when I got back to the game because I was trying to time when the game would be back on, and I saw 21-6, and I thought, did Tampa Bay just score this early? But then I remembered that they didn't have the ball to start or that they did not have the ball at the beginning of the third quarter. So I thought, man, they squeezed in a touchdown at the end of the first half. So I don't know what happened.
Yeah, what happened was, because they ran the ball on first down with like 40-some 50 seconds left.
Okay.
Basically conceding, okay, we're happy to run out the clock, being happy, up 14-6 at the end of the half. And Andy Reid took 2 timeouts, thinking that, well, maybe I'll get the ball back to Mahomes with, 30 or 40 seconds left and some time. But I think at that point, if you're Reid, you say, okay, 14-6 is not the worst thing in the history of the world, and we get the ball to start the second half. So if they're going to concede and be happy with 14-6, after the way we played, we're definitely going to be happy with 14-6. So I think that was a tactical mistake at the end of the half. It allowed Brady to drive down and get the touchdown and make it 21-6. And at that point, once a one-score game turns into a 2-score game like that, that makes the uphill climb a little bit more. So
sure,
just I thought a mistake there at the end of the half there by Reid.
Well, it sounds like it. I was going to say it sounds like it, except for again, aggressive teams play aggressively and believe in what they're doing. So, and want to get the ball in the hands of their offense as much as possible. Is the only thing I can use to defend him.
Right. Well, that's always like that's why I think of Belichick when New England was always smart. They had a sense of the game script and the direction of the game, and sometimes you have to have that sense. I think where like, okay, this hasn't gone well, so let's just be happy with where it's at, and we'll get the ball to start the second half and regroup from there. So that was just a thought. But otherwise, I think Tampa. I think these two teams are both going to be back there again next year. But if both of these teams keep these rosters intact, I think both of these teams will be contenders next year. So I think going forward. Hey, one other team to watch out for, Mark, and I think you said your son's a fan of the Cleveland Browns, right?
Yeah, we're both fans of the Cleveland Browns, sure. If that's how you want to categorize me, sure.
Okay, my bad. Well, that's right, because you stopped being a Cowboys fan after Tom Landry retired. That's
yes.
Right.
I picked up the Browns when they came back in '99.
Okay, well, we haven't had a whole lot to cheer from, up until now, but going forward, look out for the Browns in the years to come, Mark Rogers.
Yeah, it looks like they've got it on the right path.
All right, well, always a pleasure, Mark. Good talking to you. Good to talk some pro football with you. I know it's always college, so. But I guess it being the Super Bowl, it's probably time we do that. So
sure, absolutely. Thank you, David.
Take care, Mark.
Have a good night. All right, our man David Greenshield getting things kicked off. I will post the call-in number here down at the bottom of the screen. Here we go. Tampa Bay 31-9 is a 3-point underdog. So I think most people thought this was going to be a great game. Obviously, it wasn't. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Michael. How you doing tonight, sir?
I'm good, Michael. What's going on?
All right, one question first. Just out of curiosity, if you would have said with like FanDuel or DraftKings, and you would have said that Kansas City would not have scored a touchdown tonight, what do you think the odds would have been?
The odds that Kansas City wasn't going to score a touchdown, oh my word, I would have thought that the odds would have been, 15-1, 20-1, something in that range. I would have never thought it.
Mm-hmm. This is what it is, because, if someone would have said that tonight, they pretty could say that was a pretty penny tonight.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know if they had, I got to imagine that there was a prop bet. of touchdowns not scored. I would think that would be a prop bet. That's available. That was available for somebody.
Yeah, not bad. I was saying it was a sad weekend for Purdue fans because this game broke a 22-year streak of having at least one Purdue player playing every Super Bowl since 2000. But anyway, in my opinion, if you would have had to vote for Super Bowl MVP tonight, who would you have voted for?
Okay, since the vote needs to be taken right after the game, I would have voted for the entire Tampa Bay defense. I don't even think it's debatable. Now, if there has to be a Super Bowl MVP, and we know from past results of Super Bowls, there hasn't always been one MVP. There have been two MVPs at least once. Yes, I guess it was just once. There were two Super Bowl MVPs. There were co-MVPs, Super Bowl 12. But, the Tampa Bay defense was the MVP. Now, if you really wanted to do this right, then people that know football would review the tape and then tell you who the Super Bowl MVP is the next day. That's the way it should be done. But it's a TV show, so they want to know who the Super Bowl MVP is. But if it was done the right way, then people that know football would watch the game, rewatch the game, and then tell you who the Super Bowl MVP is. Because especially when it's a game like this, the Tampa Bay defense won the game.
Yeah. I was just wondering, if I'm not mistaken, wouldn't have Randy White and Harvey Barnes co-MVPs?
There you go. Bingo. Nice job, Michael.
All right, to me, I would have to vote for Gronk tonight.
Okay.
For having a good game, career game like that. Yeah, Tape and D had a good game and stuff like that. But I wonder if it was just the pressure, throwing different pressures at Mahomes, or do you think it was just, I'm trying to think who is it Todd Bowles is their defensive coordinator, right?
Todd Bowles.
Was it just the packages he threw at him, or did they just cap at it? What do you think would work?
Well,
for tonight.
You may have heard me mention this from time to time, but when it comes to pro football, I used to be locked in on the NFL over the last 10 years or so. I just watch the Red Zone on Sunday afternoon. I don't keep up with personnel or anything else. I just know that Tampa Bay's pass rush has been pretty devastating the second half of the season, and that Kansas City was missing its two tackles. Can't remember the right tackle's name, but also Eric Fisher, their number one pick from about 7 years ago. So the combination of one of the better pass rushes in the NFL with Jason Pierre-Paul and Ndamukong Suh, and then missing your two tackles, those are your two most important pass protectors, arguably. I think that combination spelled trouble. And I think a lot of people predicted that going into the game.
Yeah, but it seemed like Kansas City was having success earlier with running the football. And I just wondered why they stopped doing it in the first half, though. And by then, it was pretty much too late. Kansas City started running the ball and stuff.
Yeah, I'm not the right person to ask here. Maybe somebody's asking Andy Reid that question in his news conference right now. So he makes the final call on the play calling. He's the guy. I think they're built around Patrick Mahomes and throwing the ball.
Well, and what is it? I got to take like 180 days to college football.
Oh, yeah, what we need to do now that we've got the schedule is we need to count the days and then fire up our countdown clock. And the other thing, Michael, is I'm glad that you brought up the drought or the string of 22 years that has come to an end for Purdue football being repped in the Super Bowl, because what I did with the last 5 minutes of the game was I went through the Tampa Bay and Kansas City rosters to count up what players attended what colleges, and came up with a tote board that we'll discuss here in a minute.
Yeah. No, I was wondering, and just a trivia question for you. Do you know who the first Purdue player was that started the streak?
Well, can you give me a year? 22 years ago. What Super Bowl was that?
It was the year the Rams won the Super Bowl.
The Ravens?
No, it's when the Ravens won the Super Bowl, the 99-2000 season.
Yeah, the Ravens.
No, it's when the Ravens won the Super Bowl. That's when the streak started.
You're talking about the Baltimore Giants game.
No. It was the St. Louis, Tennessee game.
Okay. Rams and Titans. Okay. So there was a Purdue player in that game. That was the first one, right?
Yes.
1999. So that would have been the Purdue team that would have been drafted in 99. It would have been if they were a rookie. Let me think about it. I'm not going to give it a long thought. That played with Purdue in the 90s. Everybody that comes to mind that was good at Purdue was right after that, in that Sean Phillips category. I'm not coming up with anyone.
Jet Sedina.
Yeah, I vaguely remember him. I do remember him, but I would have never come up with that. Very good.
Yep, never mind. He was the one that I think he's the one that got the hit on McNair right after he got the pass. But that was probably one of the greatest Super Bowls of all time there.
Yeah, absolutely.
1 year line.
So you're saying he got the hit on McNair when he threw the ball to Dyson?
I think he got a hit on him. I remember him having a sack in the game, but I'm not sure if he got it after McNair already threw the ball, though, at the end.
So, Michael, before we let you go, run us down, 5, 6, 7 of those Purdue players that kept that streak alive in 22 years. Just give us some names. I want to hear some names.
You got Drew Brees. Of course, you got Skinina. You got Kyle Lord. You got Mike Allstott. And you got Raheem Mostert.
Okay. Those are some good ones right there. Raheem Mostert, obviously, the most recent. Good stuff, Michael.
In Cliff April, too. All right, sir. Try to stay warm because it is so chilly cold here in Indiana right now.
Oh, yes, it is. We appreciate it, sir. Have a good night.
You too. Take care. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Got a little story for everyone. Speaking of that Kevin Dyson play at the end of Super Bowl, I lose the count of the number of Super Bowls. I know that this year was 55, and early in my life, it was easy to keep track of what Super Bowl was what, but I just go by the year. So it was the 1999 season, the 2000 Super Bowl, Rams and Titans. So here's my little story. I was interviewing at the time at ESPN, meaning I was already employed at ESPN, but I would interview candidates at ESPN along with other people. And this guy mentioned to us that he knew more about the NFL than anyone. And I thought that was rather arrogant of him. He was applying at ESPN. We're interviewing him. And he says, I know more about the NFL than anyone. And I said, oh, okay. And this was at a time when I thought I pretty much did, but not that I would have ever claimed that in any such way, because of course there are people out there that always know more than you. So I said to him, I said at the end of the interview, I said, you know more about the NFL than anyone. Okay. I said, so if I gave you an NFL question and your job, your hiring status for this job rested on you answering this question correctly, you're telling me that you would bank on yourself of answering this question correctly. He said, yes, sir. And I said, okay, last play of the 2000 Super Bowl, Rams-Titans, pass completed down to the 1 yard line, game over. I said, who threw the pass? Who caught the pass? Who made the tackle? So that'll be my trivia question for tonight without anybody looking that up online. Who threw the pass? Who caught the pass? Who made the tackle at the 1 yard line in one of the great Super Bowls of all time? All right, MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, what's going on, Mark Rogers? It's Ballard Sports Media. How you doing tonight, man?
Hey, Ballard, I'm doing well. What's going on?
Man, I'm just a happy Buccaneer fan tonight, and I'm honestly, I'm speechless. It's been since the 2002 season. It's been quite some time for Tampa Bay. They're the first team to win the Super Bowl at home, and this was huge. I'm going to be honest. I had a score prediction. I think I had like 31-24. So I got the Bucs right with the 31 points, but I underestimated how great our defense was going to be in this game. And to only give up 9 points, we're talking about Patrick Mahomes. Now, I know we talk college football over here, I mean, that's what your channel and everything that you guys do, that's what it is. But I'm sure, as you know, Patrick Mahomes is this young, talented superstar guy that can make any throw. And, I'm really proud of the way the Bucs handled him tonight defensively. And shout out to Mahomes. I kind of feel bad a little bit just because I love Mahomes and I want to see him have great success and great games and everything. And I wish it could have been closer, but I'm really happy about the performance by my Buccaneers tonight.
Ballard, don't feel bad for Patrick Mahomes. He's 25 years old. He's played in 2 Super Bowls. He's won an MVP. He's already won a Super Bowl. Feel bad for Fran Tarkenton. I'll give you somebody to. I'll throw out all sorts of people you can feel bad for. Bud Grant, Fran Tarkenton, Marv Levy, Jim Kelly, Scott Norwood. Feel bad for those guys.
Right. Yeah, I got you. I mean,
I know I went way before your time on that, but I don't know if you're familiar with those names. Right. But there you go.
Not really, but I mean, there's been worse for some guys that are. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is young. He just won a Super Bowl, and he was the youngest quarterback to do it last year. I mean, what was he, 24? And now he's like 25 or something like that. And I mean, and again, like I mentioned, he's got a bright future ahead of him, and he'll probably win another one with the Chiefs. It might be next year or a couple years down the line. I mean, but at the same time, I always love a close game in a big game. You know what I mean? I'm not too big on blowouts or shutouts or anything like that, and something like a Super Bowl or whatever. So I just wish it could have been a little closer.
I gave you a long list of Pro Football Hall of Famers who lost multiple Super Bowls. Is what that was.
Yeah. Okay.
I was not aware that you were a Buccaneers fan, so congratulations. You probably weren't around for the other Super Bowl victory.
Right. Yeah, I think the last time they won in 2003, I was probably only like 1 or 2 years old at the time, so I was real little. But I've been living in the Tampa area for quite some time and pulling for the Buccaneers and everything. Just even before like Jameis Winston, I remember like what was that guy, Josh McClown or whoever it was, and I mean the Bucs have really been through a lot. I mean they really have, and they had a playoff drought for like a decade plus going into this season. Not only do they make the wild card, but they run the table and who they had to beat in the playoffs. We're talking about beating Drew Brees, beating Aaron Rodgers, and now, again, Mahomes is still young, but I mean, it's Tom Brady we're talking about, and it was really funny when he first came to Tampa and they looked at Belichick and said, we're going to find out here this year or next year, whatever, who was the reasoning for all the success for the Patriots. And not to take anything away from Belichick, but I mean, who made the playoffs this year and who didn't? The Patriots didn't even make the playoffs.
Sure, it's a strong indication, but yeah, I don't know how much I buy into that narrative, but it can't be argued much at this point. But Tom Brady was certainly surrounded with a lot of talent. It's not like they brought him on the team and didn't do anything else to the team. It's not like they didn't stand pat. They didn't say, we're going to bring on Tom Brady and we're still going to be whatever they were last year, 7-9 or whatever they were, and they didn't keep the same personnel. They surrounded him with players.
Yeah, and see, that's another too, I think, is with Jameis. I mean, he wasn't terrible, but I think it was more of when the game is on the line, or not even just that, but just the lack of leadership at the quarterback position. It wasn't working out with Arians and Winston, and he came to Tampa Bay because of Winston. And after 1 year with the guy, they cut Winston, and it was just a matter of who's going to lead Mike Evans, Godwin, and all the talent. The talent's there. It was just a matter of quarterback play, I think, for the Buccaneers, and obviously bringing in Tom Brady helped them out tremendously.
Absolutely, no question. He is the greatest of all time.
Yeah, absolutely. But anyways, just happy about the Super Bowl victory tonight with the Bucs. Thanks for letting me call in, Mark. Love your channel and what you do, and have a good night. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Ballard. Tom Brady, greatest of all time. That's a discussion for another day. I don't think from an accomplishment standpoint it can be debated in any way. And based on how most people judge greatest of all time, I really can't refute that. I'm not going to refute it. I will state this, that in my own opinion, of course, this is all opinion, is that I will say I don't believe that he plays the position or played the position when he was throughout his career. I don't believe he played the position better than anyone in the history of the NFL. I believe his plays in the top 3 or 4. So it's not like he's the 20th best quarterback of all time, but he just happened to be in the right place at the right time and play with the right teammates and the right teams, and then he won the most. No, I think he's right there. And I will not in any way disparage anyone or argue with anybody who says Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback of all time, because by every reasonable and meaningful measurement, he is, except for maybe statistically in the regular season. Statistically in the regular season, it's difficult to judge because anybody who's thrown the football in the NFL in the last 10 to 15 years has a huge advantage statistically over the previous generation, and they have a huge advantage over the previous generation and back and back and back and back. The 1978 rules change in the NFL completely changed the passing game and just amped it up exponentially like at no other time in the history of the NFL. And then just because of the advent of different styles of offense and because of the throwers and catchers being so elite and so developed at a younger age, it's taken another leap here in the last 15 years. But statistically, Rodgers has the best numbers of all time. I'm not talking about compiling just totals. I'm talking about efficient, in terms of efficiency, he's got the best numbers of all time. Now, Mahomes, what's funny is I saw the statistic this year where the statistic was highest rated quarterback of all time based on the quarterback rating, not the QBR, the new one, but the passer rating. And I saw the evolution of who was number one. Like it was Otto Graham back in the 50s and 60s, and then he was surpassed at some point by Roger Staubach, and then Joe Montana took over that title. Then Steve Young took over that title, the highest passer rating of all time. It was Steve Young for a long time, and I don't think anybody took over for Steve Young. I don't believe, maybe Peyton Manning did, until Aaron Rodgers. There was somebody in between Young and Rodgers, and it might have been Breeze. And Rodgers held the record for the best passer rating in history for a career for like a week. And then Patrick Mahomes last year, qualified for the number of pass attempts, the minimum number of pass attempts needed. And so Aaron Rodgers only held the title for like 1 game or 2 games, and now it's Patrick Mahomes. So if you look up the greatest passers, or if you look up the passer rating, I believe Patrick Mahomes is number 1 and Aaron Rodgers is 2, and I'm sure Brady's in the top 5 and Drew Brees is in the all the guys playing today and very recently are going to be bunched up at the top. Probably the passers that are going to have the greatest ratings of all time who are no longer on the field active are going to be Steve Young, Joe Montana, I don't know that Brett Favre's ratings really extremely high. I haven't looked at the list in forever. That's one of those things that way back when I used to have like locked up, memorized. It was just memorized. It's like the leading rushers in the history of the NFL. I used to know all of them. I could rip off the top 20 like that. I have no idea at this point. I saw that Frank Gore, playing for the Jets this year, had like a 3-yard carry that lifted him into 3rd place all time on the NFL rushing list, which would, of course, be Emmett. Who am I forgetting? When Emmett passed Barry Sanders, I thought there was somebody else that passed. Was it Curtis Martin? So Frank Gore's number 3. Emmett's number 1. Is that Curtis Martin? Who is that? Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Maybe Thomas Hayes, buddy.
There he is. Hey, Tom. How are you?
1 quarter. I turned it off.
You did.
Another worthless Super Bowl. This has been going on for like 10, 15 years.
Whoa,
Pathetic,
wait a minute. Whoa. Tom, you know I'm here to, you understand that I love you, but I'm going to correct you when I need to, right? You know that.
You're fine. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So, well, it was 7-3 after the end of the first quarter. It was like 7-3. Was that a bad game? At that point?
I should say 14-3 or.
So it got to 14-3 and then
21-3.
Okay. All right. Okay, you shut it off around that point. Okay. Last year's
I'm going back to the Green Bay Tampa Bay game. That was a wasted game.
Oh, okay. The championship game. Why was that a wasted game? That was a good game.
Just over the few years.
Okay.
For these playoffs.
Yeah.
It's just worthless. So this year we get to watch Tampa Bay play the Super Bowl at their home team.
Yep.
Nobody else figured out this was a bigger job.
So you don't like a team playing in its home stadium in the Super Bowl? I don't like it either. It's not fair.
I'm just freaking out or calling it out that this went stupid again.
There's been some great Super Bowls, Tom, in the last 10 or 15 years. There's been some great Super Bowls. The Patriots-Seahawks Super Bowl came down to the goal line stand by the Patriots, interception in the end zone. That was a great game. The Eagles-Patriots game was a great game about 5 years ago. The Falcons' 28-3 lead, and the Patriots came back. They went to overtime in the Super Bowl. That was a great game. A lot of great games in the Super Bowl.
And for all the national news, they told you for the past week, oh, this is Tom Brady's chance to win seven Super Bowls now.
Yep.
And look at what happened.
He won his 7th Super Bowl.
That's what I meant. And I'm just, that's why the first quarter, I left the TV on, but I'm in here on the computer. And by the second quarter, I went out and changed the quarter.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm done with it.
Well, Tom, we've been talking a lot of Nebraska football on here for you.
You know, college football is not good talking this year anyway either. So,
Okay.
All right, man, I'll let you go with it. I just wanted to call in and scream my beat there. So,
All right, Navy
buddy.
Thomas.
Talk to you later.
Have a good one. So the Super Bowl, when I was growing up, was bad. Almost every year. Every Super Bowl was horrible for a long time. We've had a lot of good Super Bowls. Last year's Super Bowl was a good game. It wasn't a classic great game, but San Francisco had a lead. What it was, 31-20, I think, was the final. So San Francisco was up in the fourth quarter, I think 20-17. Chiefs made all the big offensive plays late and won at 31-20. But that was a good game. That was a good game. Whomever's on the line, please turn down the audio in the background. I'm going to answer a question on the screen real quick. So Yakov22 is asking, Mark, what is the first Super Bowl that you remember watching? So this is the deal. The Cowboys-Broncos Super Bowl 12 was the first one that I was really invested in, but unfortunately I got dragged to church that night. So the first one I watched start to finish was actually the Super Bowl that is still the nearest and dearest to my heart and still meant the most, and it was the most impactful to me and the most heartbreaking, was Super Bowl 13 with the Steelers beating the Cowboys. And when I say beating, I had to hesitate there before I spit out that word because the officials had a large part in that game. Steelers 35, Cowboys 31. That was the first one start to finish, and still to this day, that's the only one I really cared about. All right, who's on the line?
Hello, this is David.
Hi, David. How are you?
Yes, first Super Bowl that I remember, 1969, Kansas City beat the Vikings.
That's right.
I actually calling for Kansas City with no underlying reason. But the question I have is, do you think Kansas City was distracted by Andy Reid's son being involved in an accident that leaves a young boy's life in danger in a hospital? That's my question. Thank you.
Well, it's only conjecture to try to determine what moves people. I don't believe so. I think these players are accustomed to receiving, when you've got 53 players on a team, and then you have 12 or 15 coaches, and you have other people that are very close to the team doctors and medical staff and trainers and all these people. So you've got a collection of like 70, 75 people that work together almost every day. There are situations going on constantly. They could be a distraction. So everybody's different. I don't think that had much of an impact on this game. Oh, it's off the line. Now, I love, what he just brought up with that 1970 Super Bowl. It was the 69 season, the 70 Super Bowl in New Orleans at Tulane Stadium. Imagine that, Tulane Stadium hosting a Super Bowl multiple times there in the 70s. Somebody just hung up. But that is the famous Super Bowl in which Hank Stram, Kansas City great, all-time coach, was mic'd. And hopefully all of you have seen that. Everybody that's listening to me right now should have seen the NFL films with Hank Stram mic'd during Super Bowl 4. Gotta see that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just look it up sometime. Obviously, stay right here. We'll talk Super Bowl. We'll talk college football, whatever you'd like to discuss. But look that up sometime. Hank Stram, Super Bowl 4. It is legendary, and it's entertaining. Michael Hogue, for me, the first Super Bowl I remember is Super Bowl 13. Well, you're right there with me, Michael. I didn't think you were that old. Rod Favre, I got to say, that was a bad postseason overall. In the NFL, well, we had a AFC championship game that was not anything to watch. It wasn't memorable. The NFC game was close. Yeah, there weren't a ton of great games, were there? Browns-Steelers wasn't much of a game. The Chiefs' first win was against whom? Who did they beat before the Bills? They beat the Browns. That was a good game. The Browns gave them a good game. That was still up in the air with about 4 or 5 minutes left. The Packers beat down somebody before. They beat down the Rams. That was an okay game. The NFC Championship game was probably the best game of the postseason, right? Oddly enough, even though the Buccaneers, it looked like they handily beat the Saints, that was a close game. The Saints had a 7-point lead in that game, in the fourth quarter? I think they were up 20-13, and then the Saints just turned the ball over, and that's what cost them the game against Tampa Bay. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, it's Rod. Mark, how you doing?
Hey, Rod. Doing well. What's going on?
Oh, not too much. Just sitting here enjoying the show, and it's an interesting game. I don't want to talk about too much. I got another question I want to ask you. I just think, to me, it looked like Kansas City's defense kind of tapped out in the first half. Right before Tampa scored that last touchdown, it just seemed like you saw Tyrann Mathieu arguing with his coaches, arguing with teammates, especially after he gave up that touchdown to Antonio Brown. It just seemed to Tampa seemed to kind of get in their heads, and it kind of seemed like they kind of tapped out. I don't know, but what I wanted to ask you was with this win tonight, and I've seen this question asked before. Does this make Tom Brady the greatest championship athlete ever in terms of team sports?
Well, it's a great discussion. So who's in that discussion? It depends on how much.
Michael Jordan,
sure.
Obviously, Bill Russell.
Yep.
Bill Russell's my number one.
Okay.
Because considering how many he won, and then that dynasty he was a part of, and also didn't he win a title as a coach too? Didn't he replace Red Auerbach and he won a title? I'm about 98% positive that's the case. Yes. Okay. So yeah. I don't know. I mean, don't get me wrong. I respect Brady and all, but I still kind of lean Michael Jordan in a sense that he never lost.
Yep.
And considering how tough, elite, and how grueling the NBA was back in those days compared to now, and if he didn't step away for those 2 years, I'm convinced that the Bulls would have won 8 in a row. Or they at least would have won those 2 that Houston won. And those were good Rockets teams, too. Those would have been fun games. Those Bulls would have been Bulls versus Rockets.
That would have been phenomenal. Yes. To see.
Oh, absolutely. So,
I was just going to say, to see, at that point in NBA play, as you well know, the center position was still paramount. And to see Hakeem in his prime, who's an all-time top 5 center, taking on Jordan, not that they were matched up against each other, but to see that matchup would have been phenomenal. You're right. I would have. We missed out there.
Yeah, I mean, they had Clyde, they had Kenny Smith, Robert Horry. I mean, that was a loaded team. But anyway, I mean, I'm still leaning towards Jordan in terms of the all-time great team champion, just because, again, they never lost. He was the focal point and just his kind of icon status. So I was wondering who else would kind of be in that discussion.
Well, I would argue with you that Jordan was needed more than the other. For as important as the quarterback position is in the NFL or in football in general, I would argue that Michael Jordan was needed more than any of those other people.
I agree.
He was.
Yeah, I mean,
the only thing I'm gonna bring somebody else into the argument that people are gonna just go nuts on, LeBron James. And the reason I'm going to do that is because the one argument, or there's actually several arguments that I've got with LeBron over MJ would be, number one, the Bulls did not collapse when Jordan left. They were a fraction of an inch away from going back to the finals the next year. They won 55 games. They were in the Eastern Conference Finals, and they lost a tough series to the Knicks. They didn't collapse. They didn't fall apart. Every time LeBron's left a team, they've fallen apart. They fall apart when he leaves, and he galvanizes them when he's taken over. This has happened how many times where he's gone to a team and they go from winning 20 games to 60 games and competing for titles. So even though LeBron's lost a lot of finals, just he's gone to 11 finals? It's
somewhere around there.
I think he's like 4 and 7 now. Is that his record? So he's won 4 titles.
What that could be, though, right. But the argument with that could be with that the first time he left the Bulls still had Phil Jackson, Scotty, they had Paxson,
sure,
Cartwright, Horace Grant. Now, when he left the second time, the Bulls were a mess.
Well, they all left.
Now, right. Well, I mean, you can kind of use that same example when LeBron will leave Cleveland. They never really seemed to have a set coach there, because how many coaches did he go through before Tyronn Lue won?
Yeah.
Then, look at all the players. They had a lot of players. Remember, there was kind of a lot of players that won 2 years
deals. And I mean, you also credit that to just a different era, how players signed contracts back then. There was a lot more money involved. So, I mean, I don't hate LeBron like most people do. My only really argument, not to get too off topic of football, of LeBron versus Jordan is the reason why I always pick Jordan over LeBron is just the eras that they played in. I just think Jordan played in a much tougher era, in a much more deeper era where teams were more balanced. Like even bad teams had all-stars and borderline Hall of Famers. But anyway, back to football with Brady. Now, as far as football, yes, quarterback the focal point. I think he may be. I mean, who else has like over 5 rings? I mean, didn't Charles Haley have like 6 or 7 rings?
I think he stopped at 5. I think he was at 5. I think 3 with the Niners and 2 with the Cowboys. The one thing I would say, Rod, just to get back to the NBA, I just think LeBron's worthy of being in the discussion. He took 11 teams to finals. He won 4, and he was always the underdog. And I think it's arguable that what he pulled off in beating the Warriors when he played almost every second of a 7-game series in which he was playing a team that won 73 games and they had no business being in that series, I think is one of the great sports achievements of all time. So I'll let you get back to where you are. And I would also be curious as to what bad NBA teams in the 90s had Hall of Fame players.
Those bad Mavericks teams had good players. They were bad when
Hall
they had
of Fame players. Well, you just said they had.
What?
You made the comment. Even bad teams in the NBA had Hall of Fame players in the 90s. I was wondering who they were.
Borderline Hall of Famers.
All right.
But anyway, my thing. Okay, I got way off track now. But with football, with Brady, I will go ahead and kind of put him as the GOAT. Just overall with football. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's the greatest football player of all time, but it's sort of, as far as winner, and I'm convinced, I think he could play till he's 50. I mean, he looks great. He looks youthful. He takes care of his body. And with all the exercise science and the nutrition science we have these days, I think Rodgers will probably play till his mid-40s because he looks great. He played at an MVP level this year. Obviously, clearly played at an MVP level this year. So I think it's one of those things where, I don't know. I mean, Brady may be shooting for 10 rings. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not going to doubt anything out in front of him. In no way am I going to be one of those people. And it's easy for me to say this now, but I wasn't any of these analysts who 5 years ago was saying, well, this guy's done. I didn't see any evidence of it. So, of course, he's doing something that Barry Bonds did in a much different way. He's doing it as a clean athlete. But Barry Bonds was doing things at the end of his career where it was like, how is a 39-year-old guy reaching the peak of his career, hitting home runs at an astronomical rate? This has never happened in the history of baseball. Usually guys, their quick twitch reflexes start to decline in their mid-30s, so this has never happened. Well, we know the answer to Barry Bonds. But to Tom Brady, he's just, again, it's just the combination of just the feel for the game, the knowledge for the game, the obvious throwing ability, the knowledge of the game, the dedication to nutrition and keeping himself fit, and his just will to win, desire to win. That would be a good comparison to Jordan right there, because Jordan, one of the great winners of all time, one of the most determined athletes who hated to lose and would do, the stories are legendary. And it sounds like from the discussion, at least as much as I do, if not more. The stories are just legendary about Jordan pushing his teammates in practice, and just his desire to win was just unmatched, except maybe by this guy.
Right. And don't forget Brady, he loves that avocado ice cream, and also helps, to go home to a supermodel of a wife every night. I'm sure that kind of helps too. So, but one more point about LeBron, I'm going to get off here, let other people call in. Another point you could make, you made a good point about LeBron's case, in that finals against the Warriors. Well, also consider, even though they lost, that very first finals he went to, he pretty much took that team on his back, or put that team on his back rather, and, took a very average Cavs team to the finals, and unfortunately they had to play, one of the all-time great Spurs teams. So I think that's another thing you can factor in with LeBron. So, but great talking with you as always, Mark. Looking forward to future calls, and have a good night.
Appreciate it, Rod.
All right, take care.
All right. I will apologize to the folks who have been calling. The phone lines are open. If you noticed, this past Wednesday night, we had an actual professional call-in system, and we will have that each and every Wednesday night. Thank you out there to Roadshow, Volunteer Roadshow Bobby, for guiding us through a Wednesday night. So every Wednesday night, I'm live here at 8 o'clock Eastern Time to take your calls, and it's a much cleaner, smoother, more professional phone system that we hope to install and implement for all the call-in shows. But we're getting there. We got it for Wednesday night. All right, and again, go to the community section of the front page of my YouTube channel and check out the new live stream schedule that goes into effect Monday, right now. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
What's up, Mark? It's DeAndre. How you doing, man?
DeAndre, what's going on?
Yeah, man. Thank you for the shout out. I guess that's what we call it when I'm talking about Trevor Lawrence the other day. I appreciate that.
Absolutely, of course.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people get what I'm trying to say, though, about it. And it's not, like I said, we just saw Patrick Mahomes, who everybody says probably the greatest quarterback. When I say greatest quarterback, as far as like arm talent that we have seen in a while. And he just got shut down tonight. I know he had a hurt toe, and two left tackles and right tackle were out. And, you know, he had a hard time tonight. I'm sure if he had those two players, the game probably might be closer or whatever. But what I was trying to tell you about Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, and DJ Ukule, if you go back and look at Clemson when they beat Alabama with Deshaun Watson, that whole offensive line outside of Hyatt and I think Akers were either freshman or sophomores, first-time starters, playing against Deshaun Payne. I can't remember the other defensive linemen who were in the top five. And against Reggie Wagner and Fultz, I think that was the other linebacker, and Richard Fitzpatrick. And that's to show you, all those guys were seniors when they went up with Cameron being a sophomore, when they went up against LSU. I'm just trying to show that there's a difference in, like, why is there so much hype about Trevor Lawrence compared to what we see with Fields. It's like, you know, I don't think we're just giving him too much respect. I mean, I don't think he's I think he's a great quarterback, but I just don't think, like, you know, when you say, like, hey, he's the best prospect since Andrew Luck, I just don't see it. Like, he's just that much better than Fields. And that's all I was trying to express and what I was trying to say. I mean, if you go back and look at his games, I know he only lost, 3 games in his career. I know that, but we all say the ACC was much weaker when Trevor Lawrence came through. He had more talent than Deshaun Watson.
I think he lost 2 games, right?
Yeah, he lost to LSU and Alabama. Yeah, LSU and
Ohio State. Yeah.
So I'm just trying to make that like, just look at the situation. I know Clemson lost the Pitt with Deshaun Watson starting at quarterback, but that big game, Dabo should have went ahead and kicked the field goal instead of trying to go for it on 4 for 1. I think it was on like a 50-yard field goal, and the field goal kick was pretty good at that time. But, you know, I'm not the coach. I don't make millions of dollars, but, you know, so, I mean, you still won the national championship, and Pitt was pretty good at that time.
I knew what you were talking about, DeAndre. I was with you. I got your point.
Yeah. Yeah, you know. But like I said, I just think Justin Fields is just being slighted a whole lot, to be honest with you. But I want to also say, Mark, let me ask you this. When
Tom Brady is the greatest player of all time in NFL history. I have an issue with that. And I'm not saying that he's not a great leader and that, he's amazing. The story's amazing. But when I say why he's a great athlete, let's say we say greatest football player of all time. Let's say we say, hey, Walter Payton, we want you to go catch the ball, return kick, and play running back like you did. He did all three. He could do all of that, right? And we said, Tom Brady, go return punt. Do you think Tom Brady can really do that? Run the ball?
Well, Walter Payton couldn't play quarterback either in the NFL. He did one game, but he couldn't do it. Well, here's the deal. Here's my take on that, DeAndre. If we're talking about basketball, if we're talking about baseball, they're so much easier sports to compare players because in basketball, even though they play different positions, everybody scores, everybody shoots, everybody passes, everybody dribbles, everybody plays defense in the same way. Everybody does the same stuff. In baseball, everybody fields, everybody throws, everybody hits. So you can compare a second baseman and a center fielder. Even though they play different positions, you can compare them. In football, it's impossible to compare an offensive lineman to a quarterback to a linebacker. That what they have to do is just so different. So I hear what you're saying. You're talking about being an athlete. Tom Brady isn't anywhere close to being one of the greatest athletes that ever stepped on a football field. He's slow. He's not that strong. If you're talking about those things. But the quarterback is a different animal. And I don't even think, and I made this statement, I don't know if you heard it, I will not argue with anyone who says Tom Brady's the greatest of all time at quarterback in the NFL. The numbers, the accomplishments are so overwhelming at this point. I'm not going to sit here and argue that, even though I don't believe that he plays the position better than anybody in the history of the NFL. He's accomplished more, but I don't believe he plays the position better than Aaron Rodgers does. But I can't argue anybody saying he's the GOAT because, again, the accomplishments are so overwhelming. And statistically, he is, even without the accomplishments, one of the greatest. But I get your point. You're bringing athleticism into it, and you're bringing just different things that you do on a football field that he would never be able to do.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I just use Walter Payton as an example because he had to block, he had to catch, he had to run, he had to do all those things. And don't get me wrong, I think quarterback is one of the most overrated positions in sports, all the sports. I'll give you a perfect example. If I'm not mistaken, and you might know more about this than I do, Troy Aikman has more interceptions than touchdowns. Am I correct?
No, you're not correct.
Okay, but
your points will, DeAndre, your point's well taken. I understand what you're saying. His TD to interception ratio is not great, but he did throw more touchdowns than interceptions.
Yeah, I don't think I can't remember the stats about Troy Aikman right now, and I'm not looking at a computer because I'm driving. But I understand. I don't think he ever threw for more than 20 touchdowns in the season and all of that. But is he a great leader? Yeah, he's really good. Tony Romo might be one of the way he dissects the game. He might be one of the best quarterbacks to ever play, but when it came time for the playoffs, he always choked. Dan Marino. I'm just saying, it's great. Tom Brady's story is great for what we just saw. Being a taking the sixth round, 7 Super Bowls, all of that stuff. I just wouldn't call him the greatest football player of all time because there's so much more that a person could do. Because Deion Sanders, he played receiver, played DB, and he did it all. And I'm not saying he's the greatest player of all time. I'm just saying that I just don't think that when people say, it just irritates you when I hear that. He's the greatest football player of all time. No, he might be the greatest quarterback of all time, but not the greatest football player all the time. I'm gonna let you go, but I'll give you an example. I think they did a story about the 50 greatest athletes of all time, like when we were back in the 90s. You're telling me that Babe Ruth is one of the top 350 greatest athletes? Now, you say most influential athletes? Okay, I can understand that. But not the greatest, one of the top 3 greatest athletes of all time.
Babe Ruth?
You think I was like, no.
Whoa, DeAndre, I'll argue with you on that point. You're saying that Babe Ruth is not one of the greatest athletes of all time.
No, I think he's one of the most influential athletes of all time. But I'm saying, as far as great, I'm talking about okay, let's put Babe Ruth and Satchel Paige or Jesse Owens and tell them to go run because Jesse Owens played baseball too.
Well, there's a lot more to. There's a lot more to playing. Whoa! Wait a minute. There's a lot more to athletics than running.
Right.
Babe Ruth.
My point, that's why I picked Jesse Owens because Jesse Owens played baseball, right?
Jesse Owens. You're getting in. You're getting Jesse Owens confused with Jackie Robinson.
No, Jesse Owens played in the Negro League, Mark.
Okay. All right. Sure. Okay, but I'm talking. Okay.
He played in what's called. I'm saying Babe Ruth was a better baseball player than Jesse Owens. But I'm saying athletically, Jesse Owens is probably the better athlete. Am I correct?
It depends what you measure to be an athlete. Tom Brady's an athlete because we call everybody who plays football, baseball, basketball, they're athletes. But if you say, when you're talking to your buddies in the neighborhood and say who's a great athlete, you're talking about who can jump high, who can run fast, those sorts of things. But Babe Ruth played a sport, baseball, where running is part of the sport, and it's an important part of the sport, but it's not nearly as important as it is in other sports. And he is statistically just so overwhelmingly dominant over his era that he wasn't an icon, just some kind of brand. He was that dominant against his competition.
And I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying as far as baseball, he was better than Jesse Owens. But I'm just saying, if you say, hey, I need for you to run and jump, we're going to say Jesse Owens is a better athlete, right?
Well, if you're going to say we need you to hit a baseball and throw a baseball,
I'm going to say Babe Ruth is probably better.
And Babe Ruth's greatness is in some ways what we're talking about with Tom Brady. He had certain skill sets in his sport that made him dominant.
Right. So, I'm agreeing with you.
What Babe Ruth accomplished, this is the last way I'll put it. What Babe Ruth accomplished was he came along and he started hitting more home runs than other teams hit.
All right.
So that would be the equivalent of somebody coming along and scoring over 100. Like if the average NBA team scores 100 points a game, that would be the equivalent of somebody entering the NBA next season and scoring like 105 points a game by themselves.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Or somebody joining Major League Baseball, some rookie coming out of nowhere next year and starting to hit more home runs that entire teams hit. Whether he could run or not, if somebody did that, they started hitting 100 home runs a season, or I guess it would be more than that. If somebody started hitting like 240 home runs a season in Major League Baseball, we'd be like, this guy's the greatest baseball player of all time. There wouldn't even be a discussion if I don't know how much you watch baseball, DeAndre, but if somebody showed up next baseball season, started hitting 250 home runs in a baseball season, because that's what they would have to hit to out-hit the home run totals of every team in the major leagues, we would, like Sports Center, people would be going nuts saying, this guy is the greatest baseball player of all time.
Right. I agree with you.
But yes,
Yeah,
Jesse
yeah.
Owens athletically is just he's phenomenal. He was certainly generations ahead of his time.
Right. Yes, sir. Well, Marty, man, you take it easy. As always, good to hear from you. And I don't know what happened to the phone service. I thought you had changed the phone numbers.
We changed it for the one night, for Wednesday night. We've got some help off campus remotely, so we've got to change for just the Wednesday night show.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, man, keep supporting the channel, man. Hopefully my car get here if I can sing some money. So, you know what I mean? But you take care. Put it like this. I won big tonight, though.
Oh, did you?
I took the under. Oh, yeah, I took the under.
Nice.
I think it was +4. I took that. So,
nice.
So I won big tonight.
Nice. Good for you, DeAndre.
You know.
I added up my Super Bowl all-time record tonight. I'm 30-12 against the spread and 30-12 against the money line.
Wow. That's great. I thought you need to do a little bit more since you changed jobs and stuff.
Yeah, we'll start our NFL channel. We'll get you on there, too.
Okay. Well, Mark, take care, man.
All right, DeAndre. Have a good one. David, believe me, you don't need to remind me that Jackie Smith dropped the touchdown in the Super Bowl. I've seen that play a couple hundred times. Yeah, Jackie Smith, number 81, tight end Dallas Cowboys, acquired midseason from the St. Louis Cardinals, just in the last maybe 10 years, inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But yes, Roger Staubach pulled the string on that pass. Still should have been caught, but it's explained in a few documentaries. Yes, I could recount every play of that game. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hunter from Alabama.
Hunter, what's going on?
How you doing tonight?
I'm doing just fine. I got a trivia question for you. There was one Alabama player on the roster of the two teams that played tonight. Who would that be?
One more time, I'm sorry?
There was one Alabama player on the roster of the two teams tonight.
O.J. Howard.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah, O.J. My man, O.J. Man, he was such a good player for us in Alabama. Especially those national championship games where he just showed up and showed out.
Yeah.
In that one. Man, that was crazy. I bet on Buccaneers, but I thought that Kansas City would win, if that makes any sense.
Okay, let me digest that for a second. You thought Kansas City was going to win, but you bet for the Buccaneers. Did you bet on the Buccaneers just because from the heart you just wanted them to win?
I wanted the Bucs to win, but I thought that the Chiefs had a better coach and a more youthful quarterback.
Sure.
So I thought that they would win. But I knew that the Buccaneers could win. I mean, I knew that they definitely could win. I thought it was going to be a lot closer than what the game was. And I just thought that it was going to come down to defensive possession, probably. To where somebody doesn't get a big stop. But I did not expect what happened tonight to happen. It's funny. I played poker with a bunch of guys, and we had a game tonight while the game was on. And one of the guys, he said he bet $1,000 on the Chiefs to win. And I said, man, because he bet for them to cover. And I said, man, we don't really sleep on Tom Brady, and that's the main reason why I bet on the Bucs. It's hard to bet against Tom Brady in football.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's why I bet on him. It's because of Tom Brady, I guess. And watching the team, I thought they were good enough to win. So I went ahead and bet on bet on the Bucs. So it turned out good. And I was getting decent odds too. So I thought it was an interesting bet.
This whole 2 weeks, I've been thinking that the Chiefs would win, but when it came down to making a prediction, and a couple friends hit me up right before the game, I said, I'm going to pull the trigger on Tampa Bay winning this thing 34-31. I did not think they'd blow them out.
No, I don't think anybody expected that, to be honest with you. I don't think anybody expected it. I don't think a diehard Buccaneers fan thought that they would just blow them out.
Yeah.
Like they did. Now I don't pay enough attention. I don't pay as much attention to NFL football as I do college football. But I am a Packers fan, so I do watch all the Packers games that I can get. There's a lot of them I don't get because they're not on this side of the country, you know. But I like to keep up somewhat with it. And so I kept up with, the Packers, and I thought that we gave away the game. At the end of the game there, we should have been in the Super Bowl. But it was a fun game. It was a fun Super Bowl to watch. I always enjoyed watching the Super Bowl. I kind of always have ever since I was a little kid. If I didn't watch anything, those years I didn't watch any regular season games. I would just watch the Super Bowl. It was a good game.
Yeah, it was a good game if you're a Buccaneers fan. Yes, for the rest of us that just wanted to see a close game down to the wire, it was not a good game. But, yeah, Tampa Bay put it all together. There's no question about that. The defense was amazing.
Well, I thought the key to the Buccaneers winning was stopping the Chiefs' running game. Because if you can stop the running game, you can more manage the passing game. And I thought that was the key to winning the game.
Yeah, I can go along with that. Sure.
So what are your early? How much do you pay for NFL football?
So for most of my life, I knew at least as much about the NFL as college football. Like I was a rabid, just NFL guy. Even to this day, I could tell you pretty much the score of any NFL playoff game in history and teams' records every year, and just I knew everybody's rosters up and down. But doing what I've been doing for the last 10 years here and other things in life, my NFL engagement is down to flipping the games on the red zone for 3, 4, 5 hours on a Sunday afternoon. I don't look up rosters. I don't look at stats. I don't look at transactions. I do like to watch the draft, but that's pretty much it. I just enjoy watching the games. And because I watch so much college football, I know who most of the NFL players are just based on that. But I love the NFL, and at one point in my life, I knew at least as much, if not more, about the NFL than I do college football.
I got you. Well, I got you on the line. I hope you don't mind me just asking this one quick question to kind of get back to college football, but I had talked to you since this happened. We know Alabama had a great recruiting class back on Wednesday. So I don't know how much I've seen you do some programs with the recruiting class in Alabama. But to you, as this Alabama recruiting class, who do you think stands out the most if you looked into it enough to? Because I'll tell you who I think is going to be the most impactful out of this group. But do you have anybody that you've seen or have you watched any film on any of the players that Alabama recruited?
Yeah, I don't watch high school football. I just not that I wouldn't want to. If I had all the time in the world, I wouldn't mind watching it. But I don't watch tape on any of these players. I wait until their first spring game is the first time I will ever see any of these high school players play any football.
Well, I usually just watch the tape of the guys that we have committed, and then I try to learn about them guys because I wanted to know, what we got coming in, kind of assess, what we got coming in. But there's a guy named Christian Leary, who's a 4-star wide receiver out of Edgewater High School in Denver, Florida. And let me tell you, I think him or JoJo Earl, one of the two, are going to be Jalen Waddle-esque.
Okay.
I mean, I think that both of those guys are that good. But I think that the rankings overall, I think Alabama had the better class. I think Ohio State had a really, really good class as well. I mean, you look at what Brian Day was able to do, with this year in the off year too. I mean, you see how big of the points that are off between the two teams. But they're really only two teams. I mean, there's Ohio State and Alabama this year recruiting, and then everybody else on a different level. I mean, even Clemson didn't recruit as well as they have in years past. So, I mean, granted, they signed the top 10 class, but I've just really enjoyed this year watching how this is all unfolded, because with kids not being able to take visits and stuff like that, I was really worried about how teams are going to be able to do and evaluate this kid. And I think that's the most that's probably the most difficult for coaches this year.
Yeah, so I think this is a trend. Correct me if I'm wrong, but what I've noticed is that Ohio State and Alabama have one approach that's a bit dissimilar, in that Ohio State seems to really, really jump out ahead of these classes and try to lock these guys down early. Alabama's pretty much consistent throughout the entire process and closes really well. Because I know that this was the case for this particular 21 class, where for months and months and months and months, there was talk that Ohio State was going to have the greatest class of all time, and they were number one, and Alabama overtook them here the last couple months. Then if you look ahead to the 22, I was looking at the top 300 for the 22 class, and Ohio State's already got commits out of 5 of the top, I don't know, something like the top 5 of the top 50 already for 22. So I think it'll be, I've just noticed that in the last several years that Ohio State gets really far ahead of this, where Alabama seems to close with a lot of big names late in the process.
What happened is Alabama's over the last 3 years. Nick Saban has been very slow, or I wouldn't say slow, but very methodical of when he offers kids. And I think that started in the class of 2017, when you've seen all those guys like Devontae Smith and that group. Or that year is when they really started kind of slowly but surely offering them these kids. But then once they were offered them, they went really hard at recruiting them. And that's what happened this year. You see Alabama start off really slow, and everybody was a bunch of Alabama fans were getting nervous back in the spring of last year, because we only had two commitments at the time back in the spring of last year. So the way Nick Saban has done this the last couple of years has been to just slowly but surely, offer kids, and what he identifies the kids he wants, he knows the difference. I mean, that's just the nature of it is. Saban, really wants a kid. I mean, he's going to do everything in his power, to land the kid. And that's exactly what happened with JoJo Earl. Who flipped on early signing day. Because Nick Saban really wanted that kid a part of the class, and he just pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, and they were able to close out a good class. So that's what I've seen. And just on the Alabama side, that's what I pay attention to the most. But that's what I've seen.
Okay. Yeah, that's just what I've noticed in the process. But I'm not a big recruiting guy. That's why I bring on the recruiting folks to break all that down for each team.
Well, I'm going to take one more interesting thing and I'm going to let you go. In my hometown here where I live at, we have, in our local high school here, we had the #1 running back in the class of 2022 coming right out of my hometown. And it's going to be between Alabama and Georgia. He's committing in April, next month on his birthday, March 13th. So that's a kid, if he ends up committing to Alabama, then ends up sticking with the commitment and going to Alabama, that's a kid to really watch out for. I don't think he's going to be turned into a running back, though. I think they'll turn him into a corner because he's exactly the kind of height that he does play corner some on defense. His name's Emmanuel Henderson. But this kid, I've seen him play in person. He's one of the most athletic kids that I've seen. And granted, I've been around a lot of good high school. I've been to a lot of good high school games. When I went to college in Mobile, Alabama, there were several high schools in that area that consistently put out Division I kids. And this kid's one of the most talented kids I've seen in person. Granted, but I think that's kind of cool if we have #1 running back in not just 2022 right here in my hometown. So it's pretty cool to do.
Yeah, that's very cool. Good stuff. Anything else, Hunter? Yeah, have a good one. Thanks for calling.
It's like where I'm at. It's 11 where I'm at. So, talk to you again.
Good stuff from Hunter. All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Your individual contributions, keep that in mind. Keep this show going. So we are needing to build out revenue streams to keep this going. Otherwise, we'll go pump some gas at some point. That's probably my skill set at this point, to go pump some gas if this doesn't work out. So please contribute either Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, or right here in the Super Chat. All right, good discussion amongst people in the live chat concerning great baseball players, basketball players, football players of all time. Is Tom Brady the GOAT, meaning the greatest football player of all time, the greatest quarterback of all time, or to the nth degree, the greatest team athlete of all time? Team sports star of all time. All right. Anytime we're talking about athletics, going back to the 1920s and Babe Ruth's case, let's keep in mind, yes, it would not be fair to him to bring him up forward close to 100 years and have him play baseball in the modern game. It would also not be fair to take, if we took these players today and had them go back 100 years and have them not be able to train all year, not have all the apparatus and all the nutritional programs and all the state-of-the-art equipment and all that to train on. They wouldn't have that. And they would have to go get a job during the off season. They would have to work during the off season. They may have to work some during the in season. They'd have to travel on trains and buses. There's a lot of things. So if Babe Ruth was born in, let's say, 1990, as the same exact person, he would have benefited from the weightlifting and the state-of-the-art nutritional systems and everything that goes on today that would have helped develop his skills and abilities and his talent. But the guy was a wrecking crew. Arguably, I don't even think it's that arguable. He was more dominant over his sport than any player in the history of any sport. I don't know how you can take statistically what he did over the players that he played against. Now, let's understand, starting in 1947 with Jackie Robinson, then we had a whole new pool of players that were great. Many of them great, not all of them great, but obviously I'm speaking of the black athlete, Jackie Robinson, Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, and that changed baseball, especially once we got to about the 1960s, especially throughout the 1960s. And then it was basically, if you could play baseball, you could play baseball. If you were black, if you were white, whatever you were, Hispanic, and Hispanics really stepped into the major leagues in the mid to late 60s as well. The Juan Marichals of the world, Pepe Frias and others. Then we just had a different brand of baseball and a different pool of athletes. But against his competition, I don't really know how you can look at Babe Ruth's statistics and his dominance in baseball, and it's really incomparable. It's incomparable. It would be like if Justin Fields got drafted by the New York Jets and started throwing like 90 touchdown passes a season. It's really not even that. I think up until I'm trying to think who the pitcher would have been. It might have been Madison Bumgarner, because he had some incredible World Series statistics that Babe Ruth's pitching statistics in the World Series held up for 100 years, close to 100 years. His pitching statistics in the World Series and all the records that he had, his earned run average, and so forth. So anyway, yeah, it's completely unfair to. That's why, yes, we can't take 210-pound offensive linemen from the 1940s and compare them to today's athletes. But they also had to play both. What those guys did was amazing. So we got to give them some credit too. No, we can't. If we expedited some player from the 1940s, Bronco Nagurski, and had him play in tonight's Super Bowl game, he would get trucked. Yes, but these players today have such an advantage over him. When these players, this is what comes to mind from time to time. When these players run for 7 yards or catch a 12-yard out, and then they act like they've conquered the world, like they've done some amazing feat, and they dance and they go crazy, or somebody intercepts a pass that was tipped right to them, and then they run down to the back of the end zone and they, pose and do all this other crazy stuff. I think, you know what? These guys wouldn't do that. They wouldn't have done that 70 years ago in the 1950s, because you know what? They would have had to play on the kickoff team. Then they would have had to go play defense or the other side of the football, because they would have had to play So when we think of these specialized players now, if a wide receiver runs a go route, what happens the next play? He runs immediately to the sideline. He ran his post, and let's say whether he caught it or it was incomplete, he runs to the sideline because he's gassed, taps out, or he doesn't even tap out because it's just assumed, oh, I had to run 40 yards. I'm taking a play or two off. Those guys from the 1940s would laugh at that. They would think these guys are such freaking wimps. They can't even play on the one side of the ball every play. And they're constantly rotating in. A defensive lineman plays like 3 snaps, and then he's got to come out, and another one comes in. These guys would laugh at that. No wonder they couldn't dance and go crazy after scoring touchdowns. They had to go play on the kickoff team and then go play defense. They played both ways. They didn't just play, we go crazy when somebody, they played every snap on offense in this game. Like Joe Thomas at the Cleveland Browns. One of the great streaks, modern streaks in NFL history, in which he did not miss a snap for the Cleveland Browns his entire career until, I believe, his last game, the game that knocked him out and ended his career with, I think, a torn triceps. But an incredible streak. Well, these guys, the same 11 guys, played basically offense and defense. That's why these early Hall of Famers, go look at a Hall of Fame list and you'll notice anybody from the 50s and before, they've got an offensive position and a defensive position. They did both, most of them. Now, if they had some other guys that were so much better on one side of the ball and somebody else was really good, it wasn't like always 11 and 11. But they would laugh at these guys and say, you can't play 3 consecutive plays, you wuss. So it goes both ways, you know. I remember watching a documentary about the, quote, greatest game ever played. Probably the most important game in the history of the NFL was the 1958 NFL Championship game because it ushered in the modern era of football, the NFL on television, at which a time in our country in which baseball was king and boxing was extremely popular and football was actually behind college football. The NFL was behind college football, and the 1958 Baltimore Colts New York Giants overtime game ushered in the modern era of the NFL in many aspects. Not in terms of the way it's played, but in the way it captivates the American public. And they were talking to these guys and talking to them about their accomplishment. And they asked these guys about celebrating after the game. And like, celebrate? I had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go work at the factory. So we can make fun of those guys in the 1950s, 40s, whatever era you want to point out. But there's a lot of ways they could make fun of us and make fun of these players today that get gassed after 3 plays. All right, Cheryl asking if anybody knows where Gronk played in college. Of course, that was the University of Arizona. Yes, Jeffrey, good point there. Babe Ruth gets knocked about being fat. He wasn't always fat, if you look at the video and the pictures. I never thought we would have this kind of Babe Ruth debate on the live chat here, the voice of college football. Mickey Mantle. Mo, fastballs were not 60 miles an hour. The player who went from old school to new school and did well was Ted Williams. I have no idea what that means. Yes, there you go. That's another thing that these players had to deal with. People never, hopefully never know about. These athletes have no idea. You know, Bob Feller, Ted Williams, some of the great baseball players, some of the great football players. The attention's given to the baseball players because baseball was more popular at the time, but football players as well, going to fight in wars. World War II, Korea. There it is. Thank you very much, Michael. Yes, I noted that about Jackie Smith. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Golden Blue Dude. Here we go. I did some work, so, man, it's got to pay off. I got to mention this. When the game got boring, I counted up the rosters and who played where in college. Okay, here's our tally board. You'd be surprised to know that there were no Alabama or Ohio State players on the active roster of either team. O.J. Howard on the injured list for Tampa Bay. Okay, the leading college representation goes to LSU, 6. Clemson and Michigan, 5. Iowa and Penn State, 4. South Carolina, Texas A&M, Minnesota, Nebraska, and Michigan State. No, Mississippi State with 3. Okay. Our final tally per conference is SEC 26, Big 10 23, Big 12. Hang on, let me get this in order. Once again, final tally per conference in the Super Bowl tonight. SEC 26, Big 10 23, ACC 13, Pac-12 9, Big 12 5. There you go. And I had to look at my prediction record in the Super Bowl. We got to 30-12. That's predicted the last 42 Super Bowls. I'm 30-12 against the money line, and I am 30-12 against the spread. There you go. Check out our new live schedule. We have a live schedule that we are going to do our very best to stay on top of and hit each and every day. Let's see, it looks like something like this. Mondays, noon Eastern time right here with Pixie and Pete, and 6 o'clock Eastern time on Monday night with you in the call-in show. Tuesday at noon here, call-in show, and then also at 6 o'clock Eastern time on the Ohio State channel. Wednesday, 2 o'clock Eastern time, Ohio State Live, 6 o'clock. Florida State, 8 o'clock, our call-in show right here. Then on a Thursday night, we've got a 6 o'clock live show on the SEC channel. And then Friday night at 6 right here, our call-in show. And then, of course, if there's breaking news, if you've noticed, when Willie Taggart got fired, Mark Richt stepped down, Will Muschamp got fired. Who else? Mark D'Antonio stepped down. All those big coaching changes, we go live immediately. When the Big Ten schedule was released on Thursday or Friday, we went live immediately. So we will continue to do that as well. More trivia. Hey, I could sit here and answer trivia all night. Christ Savior 888. Mark, ask a trivia question about Oilers Bills in '93. Okay, who was the winning quarterback in that game from the University of Maryland? Who was the losing quarterback from the Oilers? Where was the game played? Who were the 2 head coaches? Who were the 2 coordinators on the Houston Oilers who got into a fight on the sideline? I believe it was late in the regular season of the same. Might be getting my years mixed up. So the Oilers were ousted from the playoffs by the Bills in this game that you're alluding to. They led 35-3 in Orchard Park and lost the game in overtime, 38-35. 38-35? 41-38? I think Houston scored one more field goal, 41-38. And then the Oilers the next season. So I thought that was the 90. I thought that was 92 and the 93. Yes, because then in 93, the Bills beat Joe Montana and the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game 30-13. And the previous week, the Chiefs were an underdog on the road at Houston. And the Oilers blew a 15-point lead. They led, let's see, was it a 15-point lead? Anyway, they had a double-digit lead against the Chiefs at the Astrodome and lost, and then the Chiefs advanced to the AFC Championship game. So I believe that was, yes, that was in the 92-93 season, and then the next season, the Oilers could have played the Bills in a rematch, but of course they they lost a lead against the Chiefs and Joe Montana. And then the Bills won a third consecutive AFC championship game. No, a fourth consecutive AFC championship game. They beat the Raiders in 90, 51-3. Then they beat the Broncos and John Elway at home in 91, 10-7. Then they went to Miami in their only road AFC championship game during that streak against Dan Marino and beat the Dolphins 29-10. And then the fourth game was against Joe Montana and the Chiefs. And they really got after Montana. 30-13, I believe, was the final in that game. So I'm trying to think of the Oilers defensive back who had a pick six to score the final touchdown before the Bills made the comeback. So Frank Reich came into the game, and he didn't just immediately take off. He threw a bad pick in replacing Jim Kelly that was a pick six that made it 35-3 in the third quarter. And, of course, the great trivia question about Frank Reich is that he was the author of not just the greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL playoffs, but also the greatest comeback in the history of college football, at least up until the last couple of years. Maybe there was a comeback here recently in the last couple of years I'm not thinking of. But for a long, long time, Frank Reich authored the 42-40 win over Miami as the Maryland quarterback in 1984. Frank Reich versus Bernie Kosar. Maryland trailed Miami. I believe the score was 31-0. They came back and won 42-40, if I've got the numbers straight. Similarly, Greg Fry in Ohio State trailed Minnesota 31-0 at the Metrodome in 1989 and came back and won that game 41-37. All right. So Christ Savior 888. Yeah, we could do an NFL trivia channel. We could go on about that forever. Yes, John Cooper was 1-1 against Tom Brady. 1 in 98, lost at the Big House in 99. Ron Favre, name all three quarterbacks who started for the Browns in 1988. All right, I believe that would be Bernie Kosar, Don Strock, wait a minute, I know. I don't think it was Pat Ryan. Wait a minute. I know who this is. Shoot. Kosar Strock. That was after Gary Danielson. Shoot. I'm going to kick myself if I don't get this. In 80, I know because those are the circumstances. That's the year that they lost. That's the year that they beat the Oilers, the last game of the season, to make the playoffs. The wild card game. The Rod Favre was got it right there. Number 18, Mike Pagel from Arizona State, who also played for the Colts. Yeah, you did. So I had to fill in all the other information to let you know. Yes, I'm very aware of Mike Pagel and his career playing for Frank Kush with both the Colts and at Arizona State. But yeah, Mike Pagel, number 18, right? Yeah. Gary Danielson, yeah. Who was the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns between Brian Sipe in 1983 and Bernie Kosar Danielson in 85? Who was the starting quarterback in 84? College football fans should know this. He was prominent in college. Yes, both of those games, the Rod Farva, were extremely close, as you well know. The Browns won the finale at Cleveland Stadium, and then they lost the wild card game. There was a controversial play involving Clay Matthews, I believe, in a forced fumble recovered for a touchdown that was called back. One of the games was like 26-23. The other one was 24-23. Yes, Brian Sipe threw 83. And then Danielson worked into Kosar in 85, Kosar's rookie year. But 1984 was, thank you very much, Rod Farva, Paul McDonald, number 16, the lefty from USC. Buckeye River Rat, thank you so much for the question here. The most important question of the night's right there. What is your PayPal name for donations? So with all the other accounts I set up, it was MarkRogersTV, but I believe for PayPal, other people have been able to find me, a few other people on PayPal. It's just Mark Rogers. I think the link is in the description section of the videos. For Cash App, PayPal, and Venmo, I was able to get the link for one of those, but the other two wouldn't copy and paste because they're apps. But I think PayPal was the one that did. So I am on Venmo and Cash App as well, but PayPal should be Mark Rogers. And again, I'm not positive about this, but the link might be in the description section of any of the videos. Cheryl, you want to check out one of my videos and see if the description, it should be like the top line of in any of the videos, the description section. And I don't know if the link copied or not. But I appreciate you asking, because again, this is going to stay alive based on your individual contributions. And, when am I going to do this? So, yeah, I got to go start looking for sponsors. I have to block out time this week. If you guys could only see, hang on just a second. I'm just going to give you a preview of my big series coming up. First one's going to be launched in the morning. Probably maybe Tuesday morning. Maybe Tuesday morning will be the launch of our big scheduling series, followed by our playoff series. So we got to fix scheduling, then we fix the playoff. Yeah, right there. Working on things. Fix those schedules. We'll get them fixed. Then we're going to work on the playoffs. And I'm going to post a video that's going to be simply no buys. And I'm going to explain once and for all why there should not be any buys in the playoffs. Let's do this, Buckeye River Rat. Please contact me at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. Let's do that. Can you do that for me? MarkRogersTV at Gmail. Anybody can contact me at any time at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. If you've got recommendations for anything we should do better, do differently, if you've got requests, for video content, if you've got a connection to a sponsor, then hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. I'm always there. I will respond. Who did USC tie in that 79 season? They tied somebody that they shouldn't have tied. I think it was Stanford. I think it was Stanford. It was somebody that they were so much better than. Yeah, I got it. There it is, 21 all. So John McKay. Well, John McKay was before that. That was the John Robinson-led USC Trojans in '79. That's one of the greatest teams of all time. That is one of the most talented teams of all time. The '79 USC team that beat Ohio State in the Rose Bowl 17-16. Charles White, Marcus Allen, Ronnie Lott, Anthony Munoz, Joey Browner, Chip Banks, Clay Matthews. Oh my word, they were loaded. Rod Farba, Mark, what is your earliest college football memory? Mine is 1989 Notre Dame, Michigan, the Rocket Ismail game. Remember it well. I believe the final score of that game was 24-19. My first college football memory was the '76 Ohio State-Michigan game. Watching Bo Schembechler being ridden on the shoulders of his players in the shoe after a 22-0 whitewashing of the Buckeyes. And I, as a young lad, being angered greatly by that. And it pretty much set up my favorite go-to move for the next 10 or 15 years at least. Maybe even to this day, once in a while, I'll do this. I just the screen. I was so angered at Bo Schembechler. Cheryl, Rocket did not win the Heisman. People thought he was going to win the Heisman. He did not. That was Andre Ware in 1989. That was Tim Brown in 87. So he was the last Notre Dame player to win the Heisman, correct? 87, yeah, Andre Ware in 89. 88 was Barry Sanders. 87 was Tim Brown. But the first game that I really remember watching was the 77, which would have been the 78 Sugar Bowl. Alabama, Ohio State. That was the first game I really remember watching. And Ohio State got beat up pretty badly in that game. We're naming Heisman winners. You can quiz me on that, Christ Savior 88, if you want to quiz me on Heisman winners. I think I can go from right now all the way back into the 60s before it gets a little cloudy. Alabama football fan, Roll Tide, appreciate that so much. Thank you so much for endorsing us. Dependent Fanatic. Mark, you inspired me to post my resume rankings in basketball, sort of a version of your top 25 that actually makes sense in football. I love you for what you do. Dependent Fanatic, thank you so much. I appreciate that. If I can inspire somebody, hopefully from time to time I'm inspiring people for more worthy causes, but I appreciate that so much. Was Desmond Howard the last wide receiver who won the Heisman? Yes. Wait a minute. 1991. Yes, he was the last one before Devontae Smith. But you're right, Cheryl. We all expected Rocket Ismail to win the Heisman. He made those kind of crazy plays and kick returns, and he was being talked about heavily for the Heisman. You guys are going nuts on Heisman winners now. Doug Flutie, the most famous pass of all time. Maybe the most overrated pass of all time. I still don't understand the fascination with the Flutie pass in '84. Okay, number one, the game didn't mean much of anything. They were two independents playing. They didn't play in a conference. Boston College and Miami. They didn't play in a conference. So nothing was going to be won by winning this game. Boston College was 8-2. This simply meant that they were going to be 9-2. And in terms of the play, yeah, it's an exciting play, but don't we see plays like that? Don't we see Hail Marys like probably like an average of maybe one a week in college football? Hail Marys that win games? They're exciting. I love Hail Marys, but they happen all the time. And that one wasn't some spectacular, was tipped around 18 times or anything like that. It was, I don't understand the fascination with that play, the Doug Flutie play in 84. He threw the ball where he needed to. It wasn't like some pinpoint accurate pass. It wasn't like Roethlisberger to Santonio Holmes that had to be just laser beamed on the sideline perfectly. I don't get the fascination with that play, why it's so famous, why it's so incredible. It didn't win anything. I just think a lot of people watched it because it was the Friday after Thanksgiving and it was the only game on and people were just watching football. And so a lot of people watched it. And he won the Heisman. And as somebody mentioned here, I believe David Greenshield, that pretty much beat Keith Byers, who scored 22 touchdowns that year and ran for whatever, 1,800 yards. 1784, that number comes to mind. 1784 yardage. Did not have a great Rose Bowl game, though. He had a 50-yarder in the first quarter, and then not much after that. All right, everyone. Great talking football with everyone, whether it's college football or the NFL and the Super Bowl. Just thought it would be a great time to get together, our last football game of the season, but we will continue to talk football, and it's it's going to be a lot of this coming up. Break down the schedule and what it should look like, and playoffs and coaches rankings and player rankings, and spring football previews are coming. So there we go. All right, everyone. We will see you tomorrow at noon Eastern time with Pigskin Pete, college football coast to coast, noon Eastern time right here. And also at 6 o'clock tomorrow night, call-in show. Leave me any ideas you have for a topic. And so here's the deal. We would like to have a topic every time we do a call-in show, just something for people to spark the conversation, bring people in. I need to come up with catchy titles to draw a bigger audience. The days in which we've got like 50, 75 people in these live chats, we need more than that. Which at the end of the college football season was phenomenal because it was 500, 800. So we'll come up with some good titles, but that doesn't mean that's the only thing we're going to talk about. We will talk about anything you want to talk about concerning college football. There we go. Cheryl's letting everyone know. Just if you go to the front page of my YouTube channel, go under the community tab. I posted the schedule, the live schedule for the entire week, starting tomorrow. On Monday, we've got college football coast to coast with Pixie and Pete at noon. We got a call-in show at 6. Then on Tuesday, we got a call-in show at noon, and we've got a call-in show at 6 on the Ohio State channel. Then Wednesday, we've got our Ohio State Buckeyes live show at 2 Eastern, Florida State at 6, call-in show at 8. Thursday on the SEC channel at 6, live call-in show. Friday, call-in show live, 8 o'clock, 6 o'clock Eastern time. You know why I chose 6 o'clock? I chose 6 o'clock because there's a feature on YouTube that says you can look up and see when your subscribers are on YouTube the most. You know what time it was? So I got pushing 25,000 subscribers here. And I even went to the other sub-channels. You guys are on YouTube at 6 o'clock the most. 6 o'clock. So I said, we'll do it. 6 o'clock sounds good to me. Rod Farva, topic. When was college football's greatest era? David. Oh, whoa, wait a minute. David. Controversial Heisman winners. You mean like Paul Hornung, 1956, or Derrick Henry, 2015, or Charles Woodson, 1997? Yeah, that's a good one. One last trivia question. How many Heisman winners played professional sports other than football? Charlie Ward, 1993 Florida State NBA player. Bo Jackson, 1985 Auburn baseball player. We might have some early ones. The first Heisman winner was Jay Berwanger in 1935. In the 30s and 40s and the 50s. I'm not going to waste too much time trying to think. Those two. I can't think of anybody recently. Chris Winkie was a baseball player, but he didn't get anywhere. But he was a minor league baseball player. Bo and Ward. I can't think of, well, again, it depends on how far up the ladder you're talking about playing other sports. Kyler Murray is a baseball player. He was drafted. But that's about all I'm getting here. Tim Tebow, baseball player with the Mets in the minor leagues. I don't know if he's going to try that again this year. There's 4. So anyway, that's what I've got. Yeah, Tebow, baseball player. There you go. Good job, Michael. Yep, I remember it well. Herschel Walker, 1992 U.S. Olympic bobsled team. Nice. Vic Janowitz played 2 years for the Pirates. Cool. I do recall that. Nice, nice. Yes, Winkie and Tebow. Charlie Ward, we talked about. I don't know what Christ Savior 88 talking about there. Nebraska, Florida State, Florida, Notre Dame, Penn State, Ohio State. Oh, name top 10 teams from decade, and you'll agree. After that, I think something. Biggest Heisman snubs. I think we'll go with that one. We're going to talk some Heisman snubs and some would-be winners and who didn't deserve it and all of that business. All right, individual contributions, folks. Keep that in mind. Hit the like button. Share the videos on social media. Please do that. I reason it this way. If you guys like the videos, if you guys like the content, then other people out there on social media would be the same. So why not share the videos on Twitter and Facebook and anywhere else? All right, noon Eastern time. See you tomorrow. Vic has a business in C-Bus. Who's Vic? Oh, Vic Janowitz, I guess.